I always thought we had the perfect marriage. Emily and I met in college. She was the adventurous one, always looking for the next thrill, while I was the grounded tech nerd, content with coding and late-night gaming sessions. Emily's laugh could light up a room, and her spontaneous nature kept our life exciting. We tied the knot when I was 26, and for a while, everything seemed perfect. Emily became a stewardess for a popular airline, living her dream of traveling the world. I settled into my job as a software developer, finding solace in the stability it offered. Our life was a series of passionate reunions and tearful goodbyes as she jetted off to exotic locations. Each return was a whirlwind of stories and laughter, making me feel like the luckiest guy alive. Emily's job meant she was away a lot, but we made it work. I would stay up late working on my latest coding project or strumming my guitar, something I had put on hold when our lives got busy. I found comfort in our routine, in the way we balanced each other out. She brought the excitement, and I provided the grounding. Or so I thought. The cracks started to show when Emily was selected to work on a private flight for a popular soccer club. It was a big deal, a feather in her cap. She was thrilled, and I was genuinely happy for her. But something changed. The calls became less frequent, and when she did call, she seemed distracted, distant even. I chalked it up to the pressures of her new role and the excitement of being around famous athletes. I remember the night vividly when everything came crashing down. I was scrolling through social media, a mindless habit I had picked up when I saw it. A photo of Emily, laughing and wrapped around a young, handsome soccer player. His name was Ryan Parker, the club's rising star. The caption was a simple heart emoji, but it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. My perfect facade of a marriage shattered in an instant. How could she do this? Why would she post something so intimate for the world to see? I felt a mix of rage, hurt, and a desperate need for answers. I confronted her the moment she got home. The look on her face was one of guilt and defiance. She didn't deny it. Instead, she spun a story of excitement and impulsiveness, of feeling alive in a way she hadn't in years. Her words were a blur. All I could think was that the woman I loved had betrayed me, and she had done it publicly, shamelessly. As she packed her bags, tears streaming down her face, I realized our marriage had been a facade all along. The adventurous, spontaneous woman I fell in love with had turned our life into a scandal, and I was left to pick up the pieces of a perfect facade that had crumbled into dust. The days following the discovery of Emily's affair were a blur of anger and confusion. I couldn't concentrate at work, my mind constantly replaying the image of her and Ryan Parker wrapped up in each other. It felt like everyone around me knew about it, even though I hadn't told anyone. I felt humiliated, betrayed, and utterly alone. I decided I needed answers. I needed to understand why Emily had done this and how long it had been going on. But every attempt to talk to her was met with indifference or irritation. She seemed more concerned about her image and the backlash she might face from her airline. I couldn't recognize the woman I once loved in the person standing before me. One evening, desperate for clarity, I decided to scroll through her social media again. I hoped to find clues, something that could explain this sudden shift. As I went deeper into her posts, I noticed a pattern. There were more pictures and posts about her glamorous layovers, lavish parties, and interactions with celebrities, particularly Ryan Parker. It became clear that their affair wasn't a spur-of-the-moment thing. It had been brewing for months, right under my nose. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. Emily had been living a double life, and I had been blissfully ignorant. My phone buzzed, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was a message from Sophie, my colleague, and one of the few people I considered a friend. She had seen the photos too. "Alex, I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" Her message read. I didn't know how to respond. I wasn't okay. I was anything but okay. But I couldn't bring myself to admit that, even to a friend. I decided to call Jack Miller, an old classmate who had once played for the same soccer club Ryan was in. Jack and I hadn't spoken much over the years, but I remembered he had a falling out with the club. Maybe he could help me understand what kind of person Ryan was, or at least offer some advice on how to handle this mess. Jack answered on the third ring, his voice a mix of surprise and concern. "Alex? Long time, man. What's up? I hesitated, unsure of how to begin. Jack, I need your help. It's about Emily and Ryan Parker. The silence on the other end was palpable. Ryan Parker? The soccer player? What's going on? I took a deep breath and told him everything. The photos, the affair, the public humiliation. Jack listened patiently, and when I finished, he let out a low whistle. That's rough, man. But you know, I've got some dirt on Ryan. The club's been trying to keep his behavior under wraps for a while now. My interest piqued. What kind of dirt? Let's just say Ryan's got a history of reckless behavior. The club's management isn't too happy with him, but they've been tolerating it because of his talent. If you want, I can help you use this to your advantage. I felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in days. Yes, please. Anything you can do. As I hung up the phone, I realized that the unveiling of Emily's betrayal was just the beginning. With Jack's help, I was about to unveil a side of Ryan Parker that the world needed to see. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity and moving forward from the wreckage Emily had left behind. When Jack said he could help, I didn't expect things to escalate so quickly. Within a week, he had compiled a dossier of Ryan Parker's misdeeds, drunken brawls, reckless driving, and whispers of other affairs. Armed with this information, I felt a strange mix of vindication and dread. This was the ammunition I needed, but using it meant stepping into a storm I wasn't sure I was ready for. One evening, I sat in front of my computer, staring at the folder Jack had sent me. Photos, videos, and testimonies from people who had been burned by Ryan's reckless behavior. It was damning evidence, enough to get him kicked out of the club if it went public. But that wasn't my goal. I didn't want revenge. I wanted accountability. I crafted an anonymous email and sent the files to the management of Ryan's soccer club. Then I waited. The next morning, the internet exploded. Hashtag Ryan Parker scandal trended within hours. News outlets picked up the story, splashing Ryan's face across their sites alongside lurid headlines. My phone buzzed constantly with notifications. Friends and colleagues, including Sophie, messaged me with shock and disbelief. No one knew I was behind it, but they all saw the fallout. Emily's social media became a battleground. Comments flooded her posts, with people either condemning her or expressing their shock. She was uncharacteristically silent, not posting or responding to anything. I imagined her sitting in my apartment, watching her carefully curated world crumble. I logged into my own social media accounts, dreading what I might find. Messages of support mixed with invasive questions. I avoided them all, focusing instead on the club's official statement. They announced an investigation into Ryan's conduct and suspended him indefinitely. It was a small victory, but it felt hollow. Sophie called that evening. Alex, are you seeing this? It's everywhere. How are you holding up? I'm managing, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. Just trying to process everything. You know, if you ever need to talk, I'm here. This whole thing is insane. I can't believe Emily. Yeah, me neither. The words felt empty. I was still grappling with the reality of her betrayal. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying the events that led up to this moment. The perfect facade, the unveiling of the affair, and now the social media storm. It felt surreal, like I was living someone else's life. In the days that followed, the media frenzy continued. Emily finally broke her silence with a tearful apology video, trying to salvage her reputation. She claimed she made a mistake, that she was lost and confused. Watching her, I felt a pang of sadness. This was the woman I once loved, reduced to a viral spectacle. As the storm raged on, I realized there was no going back. The facade of our perfect life was gone, and in its place was the raw, unvarnished truth. I had taken the first steps toward reclaiming my life, but the path ahead was uncertain. The social media storm had exposed more than just an affair. It had unveiled the cracks in my own soul, and I knew the journey to healing had only just begun. The social media storm had passed its peak, but the aftermath left my life in tatters. Emily moved out, leaving behind an empty apartment filled with painful memories. I tried to lose myself in work, but the sense of betrayal gnawed at me constantly. Nights were the worst. Alone with my thoughts, I would stare at the ceiling, replaying every moment that led to our downfall. One such night, my phone rang. It was Jack. I hadn't heard from him since he helped expose Ryan Parker. "Hey, Alex," he said, his voice unusually serious. "I've been thinking about everything that happened. You holding up okay?" "Barely," I admitted. "It's been rough, but thanks for asking. Listen, I've got something to tell you. The club's still reeling from the scandal. They're looking for ways to clean up their image, and I think there might be an opportunity for you." "An opportunity?" I repeated, not quite understanding. "Yeah, they're setting up a charity foundation to support troubled youth, trying to spin the narrative into something positive. They're looking for a tech guy to help build their online presence and manage the digital side of things." I mentioned your name. I was stunned. The idea of working for the same club that had been home to Ryan Parker felt strange, but the chance to do something meaningful was tempting. "Why would you do that for me?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Because you deserve a break, man, and because I think you'd be good at it. Plus, the club owes me a favor, and I figured I'd cash it in to help a friend." I didn't know what to say. Jack had gone above and beyond, and this opportunity felt like a lifeline. "Thanks, Jack. I really appreciate it. I'll think about it." After we hung up, I sat there, contemplating the offer. It was more than just a job. It was a chance to rebuild, to find a new purpose. The next morning, I called Jack back and told him I was in. A week later, I found myself walking into the headquarters of the soccer club, feeling a mix of anxiety and hope. The team was welcoming, eager to start this new chapter. I threw myself into the work, designing websites, setting up social media campaigns, and creating content that highlighted the positive impact of the charity. In the midst of this, I began to heal. I saw firsthand the difference we were making in the lives of troubled youth. Kids who reminded me of Ryan, lost and searching for validation, now had a support system and a path to a better future. It was fulfilling in a way I hadn't experienced before. One evening, after a particularly successful event, I received another call. This time, it was Sophie. "Hey, Alex. I saw what you're doing with the foundation. It's amazing. I'm proud of you." "Thanks, Sophie. It's been therapeutic, I guess." "I can tell. Listen, some of us at work are getting together this weekend. We'd love for you to join us. You could use a break, and it'd be great to catch up." I hesitated for a moment. The idea of socializing felt daunting, but I knew it was time to rejoin the world. "Sure, I'll be there," I replied, feeling a small spark of anticipation. As I hung up, I realized that the call for help had come full circle. Jack's intervention had given me a new purpose, and now, slowly but surely, I was starting to rebuild my life. The scars from Emily's betrayal were still there, but they were healing, and for the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful about the future. My work with the Charity Foundation became the anchor I desperately needed. Days were filled with purpose, nights less haunted by the ghosts of my failed marriage. I even started to reconnect with friends, slowly letting myself enjoy their company. It felt like life was inching back to some semblance of normality. But as I would soon learn, shadows have a way of creeping in when least expected. One afternoon, Jack called me, his voice tense. "Alex, we need to talk. Can you meet me at Murphy's pub tonight?" His tone set off alarm bells. "Sure, Jack. I'll be there." When I arrived, Jack was already seated in a dim corner, nursing a beer. He looked up as I approached, his expression grim. "Hey, Alex. Thanks for coming. What's going on, Jack? You sound worried." He took a deep breath. "I've been hearing things. Ryan Parker's camp is planning something. They found out you were behind the leak, and they're out for revenge." My heart sank. "What do you mean, revenge?" "Rumor has it they've hired someone to dig up dirt on you, trying to turn the tables and ruin your reputation. They're going to make it look like you orchestrated the scandal for your own gain." The room seemed to tilt. Why would they do that? It doesn't make any sense. Ryan's got connections, and he's desperate. He's blaming you for everything, and he wants payback. I thought you should know. Fear and anger churned inside me. "Thanks for the heads up, Jack. But what can I do?" "Just be careful. Watch your back. And if you need anything, let me know." The next few days were a blur of paranoia. I found myself looking over my shoulder, wary of every stranger. Then, it happened. I woke up one morning to find my inbox flooded with messages. Someone had hacked into my personal accounts, leaking old, private conversations and photos to the media. The headlines were vicious, painting me as a bitter ex-husband who had gone to extreme lengths to ruin a promising athlete's career. I felt sick. This was Ryan's revenge, and it was working. My phone buzzed incessantly with calls from reporters, but I ignored them all. Instead, I called Sophie. She had been my rock through the foundation work, and I needed her support now more than ever. Sophie, I need your help. Someone set me up, and I don't know what to do. Alex, I saw the news. I'm so sorry. Come over. We'll figure this out together. At Sophie's apartment, we pored over the leaked materials, trying to trace the source. Sophie's background in cybersecurity came in handy, and she managed to find a lead. It wasn't concrete, but it pointed to someone within Ryan's entourage. This isn't over, Alex, Sophie said, determination in her eyes. We're going to clear your name. As we worked into the night, I felt a renewed sense of resolve. Ryan might have tried to destroy me, but I wasn't going down without a fight. Betrayal had come from the shadows, but with friends like Sophie and Jack, I knew I wasn't alone. The battle to reclaim my reputation had begun, and I was ready to face whatever came next. The fallout from the scandal hit me like a tidal wave. Despite Sophie's help, the damage had been done. My private life was on display for everyone to see, twisted into a narrative that painted me as a vindictive, vengeful ex-husband. My employer, concerned about the negative publicity, put me on indefinite leave. It felt like I was drowning, every aspect of my life spiraling out of control. I spent hours with Sophie, trying to piece together a defense. She reached out to a few journalist friends, hoping to get our side of the story out there. Meanwhile, I stayed holed up in my apartment, avoiding the outside world. Every time I ventured online, the barrage of hateful comments and speculative articles only deepened my despair. One evening, Sophie called with a hint of excitement in her voice. Alex, I've got good news. One of my journalist friends, Megan, is interested in running a piece on your story, your real story. She thinks it could turn the tide. A glimmer of hope flickered inside me. What do I need to do? Meet her tomorrow. She'll interview you, get your side of things. Be honest, Alex. People need to see the truth. The next day, I met Megan at a small cafe. She was sharp, with an air of determination. As we talked, I laid everything bare. The betrayal, the anonymous leak, and Ryan's retaliation. Megan listened intently, taking notes and asking probing questions. It was cathartic, a chance to finally voice my side of the story. A week later, Megan's article was published. It was a comprehensive piece, painting a picture of a man caught in a maelstrom of deceit and revenge. She highlighted my work with the charity foundation and included testimonies from Sophie and Jack. The response was overwhelming. Messages of support started trickling in, a stark contrast to the vitriol I had faced before. But the battle was far from over. The soccer club, now wary of the escalating drama, announced a formal investigation into Ryan Parker's conduct and my alleged involvement. I was called in to testify, to provide evidence of my innocence. The hearing was intense. I sat across from Ryan, his once confident demeanor now replaced by a scowl. He tried to paint me as the mastermind behind his downfall, but Sophie's meticulous documentation and Jack's insider knowledge turned the tide in my favor. The truth was out. Ryan's reckless behavior had caught up with him, and he was grasping at straws to save his career. The club's decision came swiftly. Ryan was officially terminated, his contract voided. It was a victory, but it felt hollow. My reputation had taken a severe hit, and I knew it would take time to rebuild. As I left the hearing, Sophie walked beside me. You did it, Alex. You cleared your name. Barely, I sighed. But at what cost? Sophie placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. It's not over yet. You've still got people who believe in you. We'll get through this. In the weeks that followed, the fallout from the scandal began to settle. The media moved on to other stories, and I started to pick up the pieces of my life. My employer reinstated me, and the charity foundation stood by my side, recognizing my efforts. It wasn't easy, but with the support of friends like Sophie and Jack, I began to rebuild. The fallout had left scars, but it also revealed a strength I didn't know I had. I was ready to face the future, no longer defined by the betrayals and scandals of the past. With Ryan Parker officially terminated and my name somewhat cleared, I thought the worst was behind me. But the soccer club, still embroiled in the scandal, had other plans. One afternoon, I received a call from James Mitchell, the club's head of PR. "Alex, we need to talk. Can you come to the club's headquarters tomorrow?" His tone was serious, leaving no room for refusal. Curiosity piqued. I agreed. The next day, I found myself back at the club's headquarters, a place that now felt both familiar and fraught with tension. James greeted me with a firm handshake and led me to a conference room where a few other executives were seated. "Thank you for coming, Alex," James began, gesturing for me to sit. "We appreciate your cooperation during the investigation. However, there's more to this situation than meets the eye." I frowned, not liking where this was heading. "What do you mean?" James exchanged a look with one of the executives before continuing. "Ryan Parker's actions were just the tip of the iceberg. We've discovered that several other players and staff members have been involved in similar scandals. The club's reputation is at stake, and we need your help." I was taken aback. "My help? How can I possibly help with this?" "We need someone we can trust to discreetly investigate these issues, someone who has already shown they can handle delicate situations," James explained. "We believe you have the skills and the motivation to help us clean house." The idea was absurd. I was a software developer, not a detective. But as I considered it, I realized this might be my chance to fully redeem myself and make a real difference. "Okay, I'll do it. But I need complete transparency and access to everything." James nodded. "Agreed. You'll have our full support." Over the next few weeks, I delved into the club's inner workings. With Sophie's help, I set up a secure system to collect and analyze data. We uncovered a network of corruption, including bribery, match-fixing, and more affairs. It was worse than I had imagined, a tangled web of deceit that threatened to bring the entire club down. One night, as Sophie and I pored over the latest findings, she looked up at me with concern. "Alex, this is dangerous territory. Are you sure you want to keep going?" I sighed, exhaustion and determination battling within me. "I have to. It's not just about clearing my name anymore. It's about justice." The deeper we dug, the more resistance we faced. Anonymous threats started appearing in my inbox, warning me to back off. But instead of scaring me, they only fueled my resolve. This club, which once stood as a beacon of sportsmanship, had become a breeding ground for corruption, and I was determined to expose it. Our investigation led us to some of the highest-ranking officials within the club. The evidence we gathered was damning, implicating several executives in illegal activities. James and his team were both horrified and grateful. With our findings, they began the arduous task of purging the corrupt elements from the organization. As the scandal unraveled in the media, the public's reaction was one of shock and outrage. But amidst the chaos, there was a growing sense of hope. The club was taking steps to rebuild its integrity, and my role in the investigation helped restore my reputation further. One evening, after a long day of work, James called me into his office. "Alex, I want to thank you for everything you've done. You've given us a fighting chance to save this club." I nodded, feeling a sense of closure. "It's been a journey, but I'm glad I could help." As I left the club's headquarters, I realized that the secrets I had uncovered were not just about corruption. They were a mirror reflecting my own journey. From betrayal to redemption, I had navigated the shadows and emerged stronger. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to face whatever came next. After the tumultuous weeks of the investigation, the silence was deafening. The soccer club's secrets were now out in the open, and my role in the cleanup had been acknowledged. But as the dust settled, I found myself standing at the edge of a precipice, staring into the vast unknown of my own future. Emily had moved on, or so I heard through mutual friends. She had relocated to another city, seeking a fresh start away from the scandal. I felt a strange mixture of relief and sorrow. We hadn't spoken since she left, and the void she left behind was still raw. My work at the charity foundation continued, but the enthusiasm I once had began to wane. The adrenaline rush of the investigation had kept me going, and now, with that chapter closed, I was left grappling with a deep sense of emptiness. Sophie and Jack were supportive, but even their companionship couldn't fill the void. One evening, I found myself wandering the city streets, lost in thought. The city lights blurred around me as I walked aimlessly, the weight of solitude pressing down on my shoulders. I ended up at a small park, sitting on a bench overlooking a pond. The night was still, the water reflecting the stars like a mirror. It was peaceful, but it did little to soothe the turmoil within me. As I sat there, my mind drifted back to the past few months. The betrayal, the investigation, the relentless pursuit of truth. It had been a whirlwind, but now that it was over, I felt like a ship adrift, with no anchor to hold me steady. The road ahead seemed lonely and uncertain. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the contacts, stopping at Sophie's name. She had been my rock through all of this, but I felt guilty leaning on her so much. She had her own life, her own challenges. I hesitated, then put the phone away. This was something I needed to figure out on my own. Days turned into weeks, and I immersed myself in work, trying to fill the void. I started taking on new projects, hoping the distraction would help. But every night, the loneliness crept back in, a stark reminder of the life I once had and the future that now seemed so uncertain. One particularly lonely night, I picked up my guitar for the first time in years. My fingers fumbled over the strings, rusty from neglect. But as the music filled the room, I felt a spark of something I hadn't felt in a long time: passion. I played until my fingers ached, the music a balm for my wounded soul. The next morning, I made a decision. I needed to rediscover myself, to find meaning beyond the chaos of the past months. I took a leave of absence from the foundation and packed a bag. With my guitar slung over my shoulder, I set out on a journey, a road trip across the country. The open road stretched out before me, a blank canvas waiting to be filled. I had no set destination, no plan, just a desire to find myself again, to heal the wounds and rebuild my life. It was a lonely road, but it was mine to travel. As I drove away from the city, the weight on my shoulders began to lift. The journey ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of hope. The road was lonely, but it was also full of possibilities, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next. While I embarked on my road trip, Emily was on a journey of her own. After leaving the city and the scandal behind, she moved to San Francisco, a city that promised anonymity and a fresh start. Her once vibrant social media presence had gone dark, a stark contrast to the days when she shared every moment of her life with the world. Emily found a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood, far from the glamorous life she once knew. She took a job as a barista at a local coffee shop, a humble beginning that offered her a chance to reflect and regroup. The first few weeks were tough. She felt lost and ashamed, haunted by the decisions that had led to her downfall. The city's bustling life moved around her, but she felt like a ghost, invisible and insignificant. The simplicity of her new routine brought a strange sense of peace. The repetitive motions of making coffee and the brief, friendly interactions with customers grounded her in a way she hadn't felt in years. She began to see a therapist, a no-nonsense woman named Dr. Lawson, who helped her unpack the layers of her impulsiveness and need for validation. "It's not just about what you did, Emily," Dr. Lawson said during one session. "It's about understanding why you did it. What were you searching for?" Emily spent hours reflecting on this question. She realized that her affair with Ryan wasn't about love or even lust. It was about escape. Escape from the routine, from the expectations, from the insecurities she had never acknowledged. The attention and excitement had filled a void she didn't know she had, but it was a fleeting, destructive solution. One afternoon, while taking a walk along the Golden Gate Bridge, Emily met a woman named Claire. Claire was an artist, painting the skyline with a quiet intensity. They struck up a conversation, and Emily found herself drawn to Claire's calm demeanor and insightful perspective on life. "Everyone has a story," Claire said, dipping her brush into a palette of vibrant colors. "It's how you choose to rewrite yours that matters." Inspired by Claire's words, Emily began to explore her creative side. She took up painting, something she hadn't done since she was a child. The act of creating something from nothing was therapeutic, and she found solace in the colors and strokes of her brush. Her small apartment gradually filled with canvases, each one a step in her healing process. As months passed, Emily started to open up about her past. She shared her story with Claire, who listened without judgment. Through these conversations, Emily began to forgive herself. She realized that while she couldn't change the past, she could learn from it and make amends. Emily reached out to her estranged family, mending broken relationships and finding support she had long neglected. She also wrote a heartfelt letter to me, acknowledging her mistakes and expressing genuine remorse. She didn't expect forgiveness, but hoped that her apology would bring some closure. In time, Emily found a new balance in her life. She continued her job at the coffee shop, but also began selling her artwork at local markets. Her pieces, infused with raw emotion and vibrant hope, resonated with people. She was no longer the woman defined by her mistakes, but someone who had faced her demons and emerged stronger. Emily's journey was far from over, but she had taken the first steps toward healing and self-discovery. The road ahead was still uncertain, but she faced it with a newfound sense of resilience and purpose. She had learned that true redemption comes not from erasing the past, but from embracing the lessons it offers and using them to build a better future. The open road had been both a sanctuary and a crucible. Miles of solitude gave me the space to confront my inner turmoil, but they also stripped away distractions, forcing me to face the raw edges of my grief and anger. As I crisscrossed the country, playing my guitar at small-town bars and staying in roadside motels, I found fleeting moments of peace and connection. Yet, something still gnawed at me, a wound that refused to heal. One evening, as I performed at a cozy bar in Santa Fe, I noticed a familiar face in the crowd. Emily stood near the back, watching me with a tentative smile. My heart skipped a beat. It had been months since I last saw her, and the sight of her brought a rush of emotions. I finished my set, and she approached me, her presence both comforting and unsettling. "Hi, Alex," she said softly. "Can we talk?" We found a quiet corner of the bar, and for a moment, we simply stared at each other, the weight of our shared past hanging heavy in the air. "Emily, what are you doing here?" I asked, unable to hide the mix of surprise and apprehension in my voice. "I've been following your journey through friends and social media," she admitted. "I needed to see you, to tell you some things in person." I nodded, gesturing for her to continue. "I've changed, Alex. I know it's hard to believe, but these past months have been transformative for me. I've been seeing a therapist, working through my issues, and I've found a new sense of purpose. I'm truly sorry for everything I put you through." Her sincerity was palpable, and it stirred something inside me. The anger I had held onto for so long began to melt away, replaced by a profound sadness and a glimmer of understanding. "I've been on a journey too," I said, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "I've had to confront a lot of pain and find a way to rebuild my life. It hasn't been easy." Emily reached out, her hand trembling slightly. "I know I can't undo the past, but I hope we can find some closure. Not for us to get back together, but to heal and move forward." Tears welled in my eyes as I took her hand. "Closure is what we both need, Emily. I've come to realize that holding on to the past only hurts us more." We sat there, sharing stories of our journeys, our triumphs, and our failures. It was a cathartic release, a chance to lay our burdens down and acknowledge the pain we had caused each other. As we talked, I felt a sense of peace settling over me, a release from the bitterness that had clouded my heart. The bar began to empty, and we walked outside into the cool night air. The stars were bright, a reminder of the vastness of the world and the endless possibilities that lay ahead. "Take care of yourself, Alex," Emily said, her eyes reflecting a mixture of sadness and hope. "You too, Emily," I replied, feeling a genuine warmth in my heart for the first time in a long while. As she walked away, I realized that this was the emotional climax of my journey. It wasn't a dramatic confrontation or a grand gesture, but a quiet, heartfelt conversation that allowed us both to heal. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I felt lighter, unburdened by the past. I had found closure, and with it, the strength to embrace whatever came next. As I drove away from Santa Fe the next morning, I strummed my guitar, singing softly to myself. The notes carried a new melody, one of forgiveness, resilience, and hope. It was the beginning of a new chapter, and for the first time in a long while, I was ready to write it.